to our Dexter's 101 session with our awesome Vice President, Ms. Lisa Reed. A little bit of background about Lisa. She started her Dexter journey in about 2005 when her husband first purchased their 90 acres down in Tennessee. 2011, they had established 2 barns, large vegetable and herb garden, and then jumped in and purchased their first ADCA Dexters. 2016, they relocated down into the Appalachian Valley in Rutledge, Tennessee, where they are now home to 50, 60, sometimes more Dexters. All of hers are halter trained for shows, milking, and breeding. That's it. That's it. Yeah, pretty much.
First of all, welcome to the AGM. How many of you guys have been to one before? Cool. So if you've not been to Indy at all, yay. All right, it's pretty fun. The thing I like the best about the AGM is just fellowshipping with everybody. We have a lot of educational opportunities this time, and we plan to next time too. We plan to really be increasing our educational opportunities for our members. And that can keep you pretty busy if you're trying to go from one system to the other and catch all the different seminars, which is awesome, and you should try to do that. But no matter what, slow down and meet the people to your left and the people to your right, the people at your table when you're eating dinner. The thing that's been the most valuable and the most fun, besides spending time with my Dexters, is spending time with Dexter people. I learned so much just chatting at supper time when we've been here before, or just sometimes people come over to buy stock, or we go to other people's places and buy stock, which I love to do, but the time I spend chatting with those people is when I learn so much, and I build friendships with them, like icing on the cake. So no matter what you do, don't forget to just slow down, talk to all the people around you, and meet as many Dexter friends as you can, because you'll probably see more Dexter owners here in one spot than you'll ever find in any other one spot again. So take the chance while you can. This is supposed to be a very broad-based, general, here's some stuff about Dexter type of seminar.
Maybe I can project a little more.
Can you hear me? Tina's in the back. If I get too quiet, just tell me to get loud. But I rarely have people tell me I'm too quiet. So let me know if I am, but I'm usually have a good projection voice. All right. This is a general broad base about Dexters. We have 2 hours to do this, so there's tons of time to ask questions. You can stop me in the middle if you need to, or we can stop and take question breaks in between. We'll see how it all goes. The information that I have is some of it is in the handouts that you got. Some of it will come from the questions that you ask. So we need to be interactive. There's a whole lot of information. We could spend hours and hours and hours talking about basic Dexter things. But I want to focus on the things that matter to you the most. So the information that you received is a general packet of general information about Dexters. A lot of it comes from the ADCA website. If you go to the Education tab on the ADCA website, click on that, you'll find a lot of these worksheets. The sheets, can I see this for just a second? The sheets that have the ADCA logo on them, those are the ones you can find on our ADCA website. The Education Committee, faithful Education Committee, are still working on making more documents all the time and trying to help people have online access to information that really just used to be in people's heads, a lot of it. And some of it would be in seminars, but we never made handouts for them. So this is a big push right now. I'm saying that because I want you to know if there's something you would like to see in written form on the website, then please let us know. And the best person to talk to about that is your regional director. Give them a call, email, however you want to contact them, and tell them, look, I would really love to see a written form of this. And they'll bring it to to the board meeting, and we'll spread out whoever needs that responsibility, and they'll start working on it. It's a goal of ours to be that place to go for written information about Dexter's in general, as well as the ADCA itself. There's a lot of history, and there's a lot of things that are really good about how the ADCA came about and what we're doing today. We want those things available too. So, by all means, every seminar we do is better because of the input that you'll give us, the things that you'll tell us you'd rather learn, or the ideas that you give us. A lot of people giving the seminars are board members, are people that are in some type of leadership position, but the whole organization is run by the members. It's a member-generated organization. That's where we get our ideas. Well, first of all, everybody on the board is a member. Everybody on the board owns Dexter's. So anything that the board does impacts us as much as it impacts everybody else. So, that being said, let's go through this. We're going to go, these are the general things we're going to hit as we go through this seminar. We're going to talk about generally the history, our READ guidelines, some quick things about milk, beef, and draft. Then we want to discuss where to find information on confirmation. And at that point, if you want specific information about specific things, we can do that here as best we can. I have a paper in there called the Helpful List. I got a lot of those things from the ADCA website, some things from the books that I like to use, things that the books my friends like to use for information. So it's just a list. It's not at all comprehensive, but it does have some excellent resources on it. Then we're going to talk about how to buy Dexter's. And one thing that I'm going to spend decent amount of time on is the mission. Before you really start buying Dexter's, you need to have a mission. Why you're doing it, what you're looking for, and I even have a workshop to help, a worksheet to help you with that. We talked about that at our Region 8 meeting last year, about having a mission, sticking to that mission, so that you build the kind of herd you really want to have, and that you don't end up building the kind of herd you stumbled into. So we'll spend some time with the mission. Then we have a buyer's checklist, super good checklist that helps you look through it and get in your mind the kind of questions you should ask and you have a right to ask from the people that you're buying your Dexter's from. Then I have some odds and ends things like a bill of sale. What could a bill of sale look like if you're buying breeding stock? What could a bill of sale look like if you're buying Dexter beef? Mostly because sometimes people just buy with a handshake, and that's perfectly fine. But those two people buying with a handshake might have a different idea in their mind as to what's included in that handshake. So a bill of sale, I always encourage people to do because it makes it very clear what the seller has in mind when they're selling this Dexter to you, and then it helps you see if that matches what you have in mind of the Dexter that you're buying. All those things we're going to run through. At any point, if you feel like asking a question, just raise your hand. We'll stop, and we'll answer your questions. The history of Dexter, I found fascinating, just because our family is, my husband's family and my family too, go back to Scotland and Ireland, and a bunch of people that live in Tennessee have the same kind of bloodline. So Dexter's basically came from this section of Ireland right here. And in general, that's called the Kerry region of Ireland. And the first animals there were Celtic cattle. They were fairly small, extremely hardy because of the harsh conditions that they lived in. It's mountainous there, not a whole lot of grazing. So they were fairly small, fairly thrifty, pretty much black and horned. And they were just called Celtic cattle. From there began to be a development of different characteristics. They wanted that the people raising these Celtic cattle got a little bit more discerning in what they wanted. And there was basically more of a milk breed that came into being that was still small, still hardy, still could be used for beef, but it was they began to milk their cows more, and that turned into the Kerry cattle because it came from the Kerry region of Ireland. There did seem to be, within that population of cattle, very much two kinds of types over time. One type was a little bit stockier and shorter, and one type was taller and more of a dairy look with less muscling. And so we're not sure who got the idea to separate them exactly. Some people say Mr. Dexter did. Some people say someone working for someone with money like a lord. But in the end, there began to be a distinction within the Kerry cattle group between what they called true Kerrys and then this other type called Dexters. They were beefier, a little bit shorter. I don't like the Dexters that we have now. There's a question as why they were smaller and beefier. It could certainly be that these were mostly chondro carriers, and the Kerry were not so much any chondro carriers. They may have been separating those mostly by the chondro gene, because they didn't know it existed or what it was. But over time, if you still are separating the shorter ones and the stockier ones, you'll certainly pick non-chondros too. Because we know even non-chondro Dexters are not tall, and they should be fairly stocky. So over time, probably there was a large group of chondro carriers and non-carriers that were selected, and they just became the Dexters that we have today. In England, they started in the 1800s, the first Dexter Kerry Society. It progressed from there, came to the United States about 1914, and the Dexters that came to the United States were imported early 1900s, 1914 to 1917. When that happened, you have to picture in your mind, this is the time when the railroads were being built across the nation and steel was being produced, and it was a huge industrial revolution here in the United States. And to bring cattle from Ireland all the way over to the United States was expensive, really expensive. You had to load cattle up on a ship, and they had to travel for maybe 1, 2, 3 months. I don't know how long it took, but it was a long trip. So the only people really that had money to do this kind of deal were the rich guys of the day, the railroad men, the steel magnates, those guys that had enough wealth to import the Dexters. They had seen them in Europe, pretty much fallen in love with them, and brought them here to the United States. These guys were not cattlemen, but very agrarian all the same, because some of them had big farms, but they also had palatial places in the city too, because these were just the rich guys. That's how they got started. There was a later importation from England again. Now, the ones that first came to the United States came from England. They didn't come from Ireland. They were in Ireland. They were imported to England. Then they made their way to the United States. So then, they were still the small Dexters that we see now. But after, about the time of the Industrial Revolution, and after, there was a farming revolution, where we started growing more food for more people with less money. So we started specializing. We started trying to make our animals for beef a lot bigger, with a lot more beef, where they grew faster. We did the same thing with dairy cattle. So we kind of, in the nation, separated the breeds, where we had beef and dairy separate. So Dexters just about lost their battle for survival during that time, because Dexters are small, and so they weren't big enough to be producing a huge amount of beef like we were trying to do. And they produced great milk, but not as much milk as these massively producing dairy cattle. So the dairy industry took off this way, the beef industry took off this way, and the Dexters climbed along right through the middle trying to hang on and survive. Most of the people that had them were small landowners hanging on with their Dexters. Almost became extinct in the United States. It was, however, an upsurge. People began to realize again that Dexters had a place maybe not a commercial beef place, and maybe not a commercial dairy place in the economy of our country, but certainly a small farm place. And now, with a new upsurge of farming and clean eating and producing your own food and trying to know where your food comes from, being connected to your food again, processing your own food again, because there's an upsurge in that kind of food production. There's now an upsurge in the Dexter population because Dexter's fit right there. That's what they're for. For the small landowners, people that want to, let me use the marketing hint, okay? Dexters are perfect for small landowners because you don't have to have a lot of land to raise a Dexter. They're perfect for the environmentalists because environmentalists are very concerned about preserving the land and not causing erosion with all these huge, powerful cattle pounding in the ground. Well, Dexters are smaller. They're friendlier to the environment. Just use that phrase, friendlier to the environment, because it rings a bell. First of all, it's true. See, we don't have to exaggerate. We don't have to tell lies. We can tell the truth about Dexters, and it hits right in the middle of what's happening in the food revolution in the United States. The truth is, they're friendlier to the environment. The truth is, they're thriftier than most cattle. Sure, they might produce half the beef of an Angus, but they eat less than half. So the math is good. It takes less to get more. And sure, they produce less than half than a lot of dairy cattle. And so we can't ever say, well, my Dexter will outproduce your Jersey. It's not going to happen. But they eat so much less than a Jersey. And because their metabolism is more balanced, there's a lot of things that dairy cattle have difficulty with. Milk fever. I'm not saying milk fever never happens in Dexters, but I'm saying things that are a lot more common in dairy cattle you see rarely in Dexters. And the same with the beef end. It's not uncommon for people raising these really large beef animals to have a certain amount of loss because the calves are just too big. They have dystocia. They have calving problems because they've produced really large animals. They grow fast, so they have to be big when they hit the ground, basically. But Dexters don't have to do all of that. So we shoot right down the middle, which used to be the least popular thing in the United States to be, but is now becoming quite popular to be because we're hitting niches that nobody else can hit anymore. They can't because they specialize. And we have these generally awesome family cows that are not specialized, except in being small and then outproducing themselves product-wise. More beef than they should produce, more milk than they should produce, more hardiness than you might expect, less calving problems than would be assumed. So that I think it's important. We need to know how to talk about our Dexters. We need to know how to tell people, like, it's obvious that they're beautiful. It's obvious that they're endearing. It's obvious that I love what I do. But I need to be able to put into words why Dexters are awesome. And because they are, it's not hard. You just have to get the right words in your head and you can tell people. Straight-faced, honest as can be. You will never have a better breed of cattle than a Dexter. And here's why. I always laugh when I say it because they know I'm about to do a sales pitch on them. But then they hear the sales pitch and they go, you know what, she's got a point. Because it's all the truth. Right? Another thing about Dexters is that they have become a registered breed. It happened long before they came to the United States. First, they were part of an English registry with the Dexters and the Careys together. They came to the United States. The tradition continued. The Dexters and the Careys were together. But very soon, after their importation, even though there was one society, the Carey and Dexter Society, the breeding was split. And they said, if you breed this, because they realized the Kerrys breed true. Breed a Kerry to a Kerry and they still look like a Kerry. And the Dexters were breeding true also. So they said, although we have two animals in one society, if you breed those two together, it's a crossbred. At that point, Dexters earned their own spot as a breed. Yes?
When you cross them, would you typically get an animal that was somewhere between in size, or was it an either-or offspring?
You get something basically in between, but carriers are so rare right now that there's not a whole lot of data for me to answer that question appropriately. Carries are now very endangered. And so if you have a carrier, you're not crossing it, because what you really want to do is increase the population. But yes, if there was a cross, you could tend, it was more of a blending. Well, they're so similar historically. They came from the same seed. It's an off-branch. But yeah, you would. But it could also depend on whether you're crossing a carry with a chondral carrier or a non-carrier. Because if a carry gets a chondral dysplasia gene, it's going to look more like an extra. It's going to be shorter. Answer your question?
Mostly.
Sort of. Yeah, you'll get a blend. Okay. So we earned our own registry in 1950s by memory serves me right. Club's name changed to the American Dexter Cattle Association, 1957. And from there we were off and running as our own official ADCA. When that happened, we were the one and only registry in the United States for Dexters. There was a split later where the PDCA separated themselves from the ADCA. So that became the second registry. The ADCA is still the largest and the oldest, but the PDCA is still going strong and seems to be really working hard to serve their members. The other group that they call themselves a registry are the legacy group of people, and they have a database also. So where we used to be the only database collection of Dexters in the United States, there are now 3 database collections. Each database has different services and has a different way of functioning. The ADCA is a full-fledged association, which means membership. We have a full board of directors that governs the way things go in the association, and then the board of directors is undergirded by our SOPs, which is standard operating procedures, and our articles of incorporation, and everything that tells the board how everything should run. So it's a serious group of people, and it's well organized, and it's well administrated. So that's where we are today. Question? All righty. Let's move on.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Can a cow be registered in more than one of these associations?
Yes, ma'am. Certainly. And some people do that. Some people single register, some people double, triple. I haven't heard of any of those registries turning people down for wanting to add your cow or bull or steer even to their registry, to their database.
If somebody has gone 2 or 3 generations in one organization and somebody wants to buy a baby and get it into another, can they do that? Or can they go by breeding or a deed?
It can be done. It depends on which organization you're going from and where you're wanting to land to. And the organization you're landing to, this animal has to fit their registration requirements. So there's no reciprocity where you can, for the ADCA, there's no reciprocity where you can take any animal from any registry and automatically register it. But there's nothing that says any animal from any registry can't be. You can. You just have to fit in our whatever regulations we have. If they don't require genotyping, so the animal's not genotyped, but we do, then you have to genotype. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So as long as the animal fits our requirements, it can be registered. Is that clear enough, Joel?
So Right, yeah. Just has to meet the requirements of the ADCA to be registered with the ADCA.
Yeah. And the requirements are online, if you want to read them.
Well, mine are all here right now. I just.
So you're good to go.
If your animals are in the ADCA, they can be registered anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. If they meet the ADCA requirements, they can be registered elsewhere,
Okay.
but not always the other way around. Because
Do
we
they
have
have to be-
some requirements that others don't.
Is there a physical inspection for the animals that we want, if somebody wanted to bring one in, is there a physical? Or is it just going to be the DNA and,
It's through pedigree. That's a good question. The ADCA registered is a pedigree registry.
right,
So you have to have parents registered in the ADCA
right.
or register a bull having been added to the registry to be added, because for the ADCA you have a clean family tree.
Right.
We don't want holes in that family tree. So basically that's what has to happen. There has to be a clean family tree. And part of that requirement at this point is genetic testing, only for genotype, only to get a genetic fingerprint so that we can verify the parents, because the parents are part of the family tree. Okay. Is that good enough? Got it? All right. Breed guidelines. We just have general, I love that picture. That's just a really cute cat picture. Our breed guidelines describe what the ADCA believes is what a Dexter should look like. They're general. They're not breed standards. In other words, we don't inspect your Dexter to make sure it meets these standards before it can be registered. We're a pedigree registry. But when you join the ADCA, the assumption is that you have joined a team of people that are all going to work together to produce Dexters that fit our guidelines. So it's like an unspoken agreement to be part of this community. When you're in the ADCA, you're a part of a community automatically that's working to preserve a very rare breed. There's a lot of variation in Dexters within the general breed itself, but there are certain things that it really must need to have to look like a Dexter, or to behave like a Dexter temperament-wise, or to produce like a Dexter with milk or beef. So these certain things are general guidelines that we basically all say, we agree this is it, and we're going to work hard to produce Dexters so that the next generation has Dexters that look like these Dexters, that look like Dexters 20 years ago, that were like Dexters when they first became a breed. So our guidelines aren't meant to be draconian rules. They're meant to basically be an unspoken agreement among ourselves to do the best we can to take care of this breed so that it's thriving 10 years from now. I won't go through it all and read it all unless you have some specific questions, because you have the document there. The document's also available online. And all the documents that we have online you can print out. There's not like copyright where you can't print it out yourself. And I know some people that print out the documents and keep them in a book. It's really kind of a good thing because you can always look at, refer to them. Bulls, cows, and steers. This is where I just wrote down, once again, the breed guideline description to talk about how bulls, there's a general breed description, and then there's specific, related specifically to cows, specifically to bulls, and specifically to steers. Believe it or not, we even have, we want a steer to look like a Dexter steer too. It's part of the breed. Something worth looking at, we really do have in our breed description a description of the udder of a cow. I know there's been a lot of talk lately because people are starting to get concerned about Dexters and their conformation and wanting to have a really well-uddered cow, especially people that milk, but even people that don't milk. Why? Tell me why you would want a well-uddered cow if you don't milk.
You got to nurse a baby.
More than once.
Yeah.
Like 15
Forever.
times. Many times it has to nurse a baby. And the fewer years it's in production, then the less value that cow ends up having. So if you have a well-structured udder that produces the appropriate amount of milk, that udder is going to hold up a long time, which is what a Dexter should do, and it's what we really want it to do. And for us to preserve this breed so that it's still in great shape 10 or 15 or 20 years from 50 years from now, we need good, well-structured cows with good udders. I've had people say, I don't milk my Dexters. What does it matter? Well, it matters. It matters for the health of the cow. It matters for the value to your farm. Why would you get a cow that's only productive for 5 years and her udder falls apart? She steps on it and now she's out of production. Now you got to replace her. The longer these cows live, the more money's in your pocket. So for a lot of reasons, the structure. And why does it matter about the testicles and men package on our bulls? Why would that be important? I mean, if they're siring calves, they're producing babies, what else could we expect of a bull? Why does those details matter? Anybody have a clue?
No.
Huh?
Continued health for the animal.
Continued health for the animal. True. Maybe fertility. If that isn't structured correctly, it might take him 2 or 3 months to actually get a female pregnant instead of the first heat that she goes into. So fertility could be a problem. Why else? What would be other reasons?
Well, that heifer's udder structure is really heavily tied into her sire's testicles.
Yeah. Did we know that?
Can you repeat that?
Yes. A heifer's udder structure and her eventual udder development is heavily tied into the proper structure or improper structure of her sire's male package, of his scrotum and his testicles. So if you have a bull whose testicles are just uneven, well, why does that matter? Well, because you're probably going to get udders like this, or like this, or like this. So I understand, I'm just creating 2 cows a year and I have a small farm and I don't care about all those details. I get that. But then we go back to, we're all raising rare cattle. And so we kind of need each other. And it's a community effort to carry this breed into the next generation. So even if you've just got 2 a year, you can contribute to the betterment of this breed by 2. So it's important for every breeder to care about structure. Very important. Because we're all in this together. Okay? Any questions?
I'd like to add that a loose sheath and a prepuce that hangs out can cause serious damage, especially like our bull. He's real short and we've got brambles. And so if he lets it hang out, that could cause a serious infection and we could lose him prematurely if he had a loose sheath.
Yes, if the bull sheath is loose, she's making the point, he could be productive one season and hit the blackberry brambles and he's done. Mm-hmm. If the sheath is loose, it's open to all kinds of damage and infection. So another good reason. And who wants to buy a bull again when you just bought one 2 years ago and you don't have one to sell now? You're out quite a bit of money. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Let's move on down the line. Then I added, because we have it in our breed guidelines, the general sizes that we want to have for Dexters and then the general show quality. A lot of people don't show, and that's perfectly fine. But for those people that do, we need uniformity in what we expect in the Dexters for the show ring. And we certainly don't want Dexters in the show ring that look absolutely nothing like Dexters in real life. Our show ring, the goal is for our show ring to exhibit Dexters. These are Dexters. We don't want the show ring to say, these are kind of like Dexters, but they're just show Dexters. If you want to see a real Dexter, come into my pasture. That's not where we're headed as a breed, and that's not where we're headed in exhibition and showing either. We want our breeders to pull those Dexters right off their pasture, give them a good bath, bring them to the show, and show us what you've got in your pastures. Now, I hear people tell me, well, I don't want to show cow. I just, I don't really care if I have a show cow. Well, you might want to think about that again. Because if there's been a female that has been before 2 or 3 judges, and every single judge said, this is a high-quality female, that's not a bad thing. Shows aren't beauty contests. Well, don't tell my Dexters that, because they're very beautiful. But it's not a beauty contest. It's all about structure and durability and production. If a judge in the ring says, "No, this cow is a good production cow," he's giving you a compliment, and he's not going to say, "This cow has beautiful eyelashes," although most of my Dexters do. So we want production qualities in our animals, and that's why most people show them to hear what a judge has to say. And I've had a judge sway me one direction or the other in my breeding program here and there. Because that's what they do. May not agree with every judge all the time, but I learn a lot when I'm in the show ring. So don't discount, if you don't show, don't discount an animal because they do show. There might be some real quality there. Oh, the sizes. This is size ranges. All right, how in the world do you come up with size ranges for Dexter cattle, for heaven's sake? Because we have the short shorts and the tall shorts, and the short longs and the tall longs, and how tall is too tall and how tall is too short for the shorts and the longs. Okay, that's the kind of discussions that we have. We're trying to figure out what's reasonable for us as a breed to say, here's this general size. So this doesn't tell you if you have a 51-inch bull, we're not saying off with his head, his beak. But we're just saying, if you're looking for a Dexter, you're going to find the animals in this size range right here. In the middle of that size range, that's where most of them fall, and we'd like for them most to fall. So that's a good way to describe to people the sizes of Dexters. You're going to find extremes one or the other. They just exist. But if you want to know what size to breed for, then squish it to the mid-range as best you can and say, this is kind of what we shoot for. It's this mid-range size Dexter. But just because they're extremely short or extremely tall doesn't necessarily mean they don't fit as a Dexter, or maybe that they don't even need to be culled. Does that make sense? We're not saying we're going to measure your Dexters. We're going to tell you if you can call them a Dexter or not. Middle. Any more questions about that?
Just to note that as for new breeders, you're going to get more and more folks looking towards this optimum range. So if you have the ones that are way big, those tend not to sell well because they're starting to go back to the phenotype, which is the structure doesn't look like a Dexter. So if you're raising to sell, the market's going to be looking for that.
Yeah. Now I've had some people that are big producers say, I'm shooting for the higher range up here. I want big Dexters because I want more beef. And then I have the novelty breeders say, I want small Dexters. I'm shooting for the smallest Dexters I can. And I hear them. I understand what you're saying. But that's not the focus of the ADCA, is to make the breed smaller or to make the breed larger. The ADCA's focus is to keep Dexters healthy and true and strong, right down the middle of what's reasonable for a Dexter. So there may be breeders out there pushing the extreme, one side or the other, but they're not partnering the way the ADCA would expect them to partner with all the rest of it. So it does happen, and they have reasons for doing it, and they don't get kicked out of the ADCA for doing it. But I would strongly recommend that you shoot for the middle. It's healthy for the breed. Yes?
Who came up with the standards, and is the board trying to increase the height of the bull, or is that just?
No. No. Here's how the standards work. Standards have been, the guidelines have been around for a long time. They were tweaked historically here or there all along the way. And the board finally decided we just need to sit down and have a serious discussion. Because some people didn't have any idea where the guidelines came from. And some people were campaigning to move the direction up or the direction down. And you know where we are in the community of Dexterhood right now is varied, and the desires are varied. So we studied where we've been historically. The board took it upon themselves to study where we had been historically on how we got to where we are now with our sizes. Then we looked at Dexters across the United States and those Dexter societies or associations and what their breed descriptions were. And we took all that information back into just this big pile of information. And then we talked with breeders in the United States that have been around a really long time. Because, I mean, we have history here. It's a waste if you don't go back to those old breeders and say, where have we been and what have you seen? So we got their counsel. And in the middle of all that, we realized we have to be realistic. First of all, the old breed description basically described Dexters at 2 years old. The assumption in people's head was, that's mature size. And it's not. You have a bull growing quite a bit past 2 years old, getting much more muscled and taller. So although we had this top size for a 2-year-old bull, it wasn't the top size for a bull. So it wasn't clearly written and it wasn't clearly communicated. So we backed off and we said, okay, reasonably here, probably how big would a bull be where you can look at it and still say, that's a big Dexter bull, but there's no doubt that's a Dexter bull. And the same with the short end. So after all that discussion and talking to different people who'd been breeding for many, many years, and they had stats, and they knew how tall the bulls got and how short the bulls got, same with the females, all of that combined into this. And when I say that the board works on something and decides something, we are not all the same on the board. We don't all think alike. We don't all have the same opinions. We're as different as you guys are. So this was not, Joel, am I kidding you? This was not short. And it wasn't simple. We had a lot of give and take until we finally realized this is reasonable. Because we described the short end and the long end of it, and then we said, but the majority should and probably do fit right here. And that was reality. That looked to us like, that's Dexter. Of course, you're going to have super tall ones. Of course, you're going to have super short ones within there. So, does that answer your question?
Yes.
It's the board's task to go about those things, but it can take a while because the board is not homogeneous. We're not all the same, and we hash stuff out for a while sometimes. We always end up agreeing or agreeing to disagree, and you might be in the majority once and the minority the next. But I took the time to explain that because I'm so proud how hard the board worked to get this, knowing that this could be politically a hotbed because people have opinions about the exercises. But we said, well, it needs to be done. So we're just going to have to do it. So that's the process that we went through. And I think it's fair. I think it's reasonable. And then the next question is, does it give me as a breeder something real to shoot for? And it does. It gives me exactly what I want to shoot for. And I know when I'm shooting too high or too low. Yeah.
You mentioned length. Has there ever been thoughts of an official standard for the length of a Dexter, or is that just nobody
Not that I
cares?
know of, but it would be a good idea. Judges look at that.
What was the question?
Length,
Oh, no.
body length. Judges look at that all the time at show ring. And a long body's good. A long body's real good. As long, well, within reason. Unless it's so long that the structure can't support it. But we don't have anything down specifically for that. Don't know that we couldn't, but it might take some time and measurement to figure all that out. Good point. Anything else? Okay. Stop me if you need to. Dexter beef. Which is one of my favorite things. We raise Dexter. How many people in here have eaten Dexter beef? You're missing out if you haven't had Dexter beef. It's so good. How many people in here like raise and sell Dexter beef? How many people aren't doing it yet but plan to? Yeah. Dexter beef is one of the most, in our experience, the most marketable things about a Dexter. You can't walk to your neighbor next door or to your people at work and say, hey, I want you to buy a heifer. But they'll buy Dexter beef. The one thing we can sell to almost anybody is Dexter beef. So I tell everybody all the time, I understand that you want to raise Dexters. I understand that you want to raise seed stock and sell those for the price that you can so that you can stay sustainable, but do not overlook selling Dexter beef. That's a value on your farm that'll take you a long way. So Dexters are known, basically, this is a picture of our steak. I like the marbling, I think it's nice. Dexters are known for having nice marbling with sufficient cover fat. It's a complex flavor in the beef, and it's a darker color than most beef. I can spot my beef from anybody else's beef. It just looks different. Why are all those things important? Marbling is important, and you do have a sheet that should have that on it. Marbling is important for tenderness and taste. Cover fat is important, because if an animal puts on enough cover fat, you can leave that beef hanging in the beef locker to age. And age is important for taste and for tenderness. So Dexters check off all the boxes for excellent beef animals. And they're thrifty. That means you can put less. If you take the input with the output ratio, it's good. It can be a money maker. Any questions about Dexter beef? Yes.
What's the difference between finishing out with grass versus beef?
That's a good question. You can ask everybody here, and you get a different answer on how they do your beef. Some people do full grass fed, never give them anything but grass. Dexters can thrive on that. That's a good thing. Some people do pastured, and then they feed them some portion of grain once a day. We do that like their whole life. We do that, we call them, they come in, we give them a little bit of grain, and we can look at the whole herd every day.
So is there a difference in the taste of the beef?
Yep, I'll get to that. Then some people finish. They do grass all the way up to a certain point, and then it's just grain with special finishing. There can be a difference in, let me say that there can be a difference in the taste. There can be a difference in the marbling or the cover fat, but the can be is often determined by the genetics of the animal. If an animal isn't going to put on a lot of cover fat, then you can't say a grass-fed animal is going to have a lot less cover fat than a grain-fed animal. You might have some animals with grass genetics, plenty cover fat, but nothing but grass. So you kind of have to taste and try to see what works for your farm, because the type of forage that you have matters from one climate to another. The type of grain you choose, if you're going to do it, would matter to the taste, and to the texture and to how they gain. And your management. If you've got a management system in place that stresses the animals out a lot, then no matter what you feed them, it decreases the quality of the beef. Because a really stressed out animal is going to produce stress hormones that damage the beef. So it's a complicated question to answer, but I will tell you this. Generally, grass-fed animals would have less fat or marbling. Generally, it would be a leaner beef. And generally, it might be a richer, more complex flavor. And then when you add grain to it, it tends to mild the flavor a little bit, and it can tend
to do all sorts of different
and see, dexters will eat like so many different things. Brambles and blackberries and the environment that they're in. Because I don't control what kind of grasses my dexters eat. And I live in Appalachia with all kinds of stuff growing everywhere. And my dexters eat a lot, almost anything. Well, for sure, what they eat is going to have an effect on the beef that they produce. So it's a complex question. Did I help?
Yeah.
Kind of.
I mean, I don't think you'll know until like you take a try.
Yeah, and then you can try somebody else's beef, and it might be different than what you produce at your farm. And it took us a little bit to come up with, we've never not liked Dexter beef. Always loved Dexter beef. But we like it even better now, because what we're producing, we've moved our management and our feeding around to where we have the animals that we're producing are thriving exactly like we want them to thrive, and we're putting exactly the beef that we want on our plate. So we can take a little time, but that's really very subtle. Generally Dexter beef is
The management and the handling of your animals truly
does matter.
When an animal gets stressed, it releases cortisol. That is not what you want in the food. So the more you can get your animals comfortable moving in and out of your trailers, being handled, and less stress, the better the quality. So it's not just about what you're putting in, it's how you're making it.
It can.
Does it change the length of time that it takes to grow a calf to a finished animal, if it's all grass or with the time?
Generally speaking, yes. Generally speaking, it can. Well, but see, that depends on what your target weight is. So
The grass-fed grow a little slower?
They can. But then some genetics are slow maturing. So if you have a herd of slow maturing genetics, are going to mature slower. So yes, it can. And in the broad sense, all grass-fed beef can take a little bit longer to produce than grass with grain supplementation. But that's a huge generality that you would just have to flesh out yourself and see how that works for you. Yes?
We are at that, we took this class because we are at that crucial stage. We are at just past 2 years from our very first born calf to his number 145, being born April 15, 2016. We are at that 2 years. When Jen and I talked about grass-fed versus grain finish, we had a really long conversation. Based on what we want as individuals, we are going to finish it only on grass. I don't want to change anything. I want to see without the natural process, I want to see what happens. B, I don't want to change anything and then say, well, okay, I wonder what would have happened if I'd done this instead. As we get further into this, to make changes based on what we think is, because we're very new. We went from 2 to 25 in 2 years. So we are at that stage right now where we're beginning to get to a point where our dexters are getting to a point where we want to be able to sell the meat. What I really want to know is what everything we did for the last 2 years, was it right?
And you'll find out.
When we are in a 45-day period now in that process.
Oh, and here's another thing to think about. If you're going to sell beef, you have to have a market. And if you're going to have a market, you have to have a population of people you sell to. My husband and I sell to people that are already, and we purposely market to people that are already buying specialty beef at the specialty beef market. So it's expensive beef. So our beef isn't cheap, but it's also cheaper than that beef. We lower the price a bit. But our clients, almost all, well not all of them, but a huge amount of them, are not agricultural. And so if our beef is way different and not as tender, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as the beef they buy at the store, then they're not going to buy from us again. It's enough familiar to them that they don't have to cook it differently, they don't have to do anything different. It has the marbling that they want, it's lean enough, but it's not too lean. So we were able, for the market that we sell to produce the kind of beef that we want to produce. But we didn't do that with our first steer. We had to tweak it a little bit. And then we had to find out where we fit in the market. Our first market was our friends and family, who you live close to, who you could snooker into buying some of your beef. But now the market's grown and we actually have a population of beef clients. So now our focus is to make sure that the beef they had last time is at least as good and very familiar to the beef that they have this time. So now our focus is growing our beef consistently.
It's very market driven, right?
Yes.
It's very market driven. So beef I sell, people I sell to want absolutely no grain. So all my cattle are grass finished because that's what my clients want.
I can't produce specialty beef for everybody. If you want organic, then you can't buy from me because I'm not going to go through everything you have to go through to have an organic farm. So I can't sell beef to you. If you want all grass fed, I don't do that. Ours are all pastured their whole lives with grain supplement. So I had to settle in my mind, some people are not going to buy my beef. And I'm not going to fit some people's idea of the best beef producer. But for the people that I have targeted, I want to be the best beef producer for them. So you can't be everything to everybody, but you find who you want to sell to and you do your best. It'll pay off. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So, average time on the beef cow year process.
You can say 24 months, and you can go 18 to 30, 29.
Average time.
And you won't go wrong. You'll get good beef anywhere within those margins. But then the trick for you is to figure out what you like the best, what fits your management the best, and at what point you're getting less beef gain and more money going in. And so you stop and you process right there at the peak of their production of beef and of your ability to make a profit. And there's no way to tell you that. But you can sure figure it out yourself. It won't take you too long. A couple steers and you'll start to figure it out. And then you can tweak it a little there until you hit your mark.
It's different. Again, it goes back to what my cows have access to eat, protein-wise and nutrient-wise.
Climate, food.
Herbs. And so you just kind of have to know what your environment is, right?
And genetics. I have some steers that flesh out faster than others. They're always from the same line. So I've learned that. And then if I want to focus on a certain speed of flesh out, then I'll sell those other cows that are producing those that mature too slowly or don't flesh out fast enough. So then you make herd changes as you go to get the product that you're looking for. But there's just it doesn't take decades to figure this out, but it might take a few years to settle yourself where you want to be. From my experience. Okay, we good?
Well, while we're on meat, I just wanted to add an old farmer had shared with us and said, how do you know when they're done? Like, how do you know when you're ready to process? And he said he always looks at where the tail head is and the I don't know, the pin bones, that space there he's like, you don't want it to dip. You almost want a little bulge, not too much, because then there's too much fat coverage. The other thing I've learned too is that the first time I saw this, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit, I thought our steer had a tumor because he's got what I call moves. He's got like an udder, and it's huge. I mean, he's just a fat little chunk. But, you know, it was like right before processing, they just start packing on a little bit of weight. And, you know, but you kind of visualize, you see that fat level, and you know they're ready to go.
Look across their hips, too. I mean, not their hips, their ribs.
Yeah,
and
the ribs.
see if you're getting some fat cover on the ribs. And then you can look down the back and see if you see backbones. It's really just getting in your head what it looks like to have a steer that's got enough fat on it.
Yeah.
And learning the spots to look. If we're going to the processors, we're just going to take one steer at a time. That's more expensive for us. Our processors are over an hour away. So we might hold one steer longer because his half brother's coming up, or two half brothers are coming up, because we want to take them all together. You know, so it's not, we don't process every steer the second we think they're done. But we get really close with all of them, depending on how we manage it and how it works out for us. Are we good? Should we move on? Milk is one of my favorite things about Dexter's. We won't stay here long if you don't want to. But I do have a milk handout. It says the component of milk has nothing to do with Dexter's specifically, but everything to do with the general makeup of milk. Generally, it looks like this, right here. Just kind of shows you in a glass of milk what you're getting. Isn't that a cool graphic? So you can see you're just mostly getting water, but it tells you all along the way how much protein, how much fat typically, etc. That's just a general milk tutorial. With Dexter's, you want 1 to 3 gallons. If you're getting more than 3 gallons and that's what you want, it's okay. But you're going to start pushing your animals more towards the dairy side, and we try to keep more towards the dual purpose. If you're getting less than a gallon a day, that might be an alert to you to keep an eye on that cow, because you don't want a cow that's not producing enough. So 1 to 3 gallons, pretty much in the middle, once again, of what we say is Dexter-ish. And Dexter's are known for having fairly high fat content, really nice for making cheese and all the dairy products that you can make. You will find sometimes that you have to process Dexter milk into dairy products maybe a little differently than you would Holstein or Jersey because of the fat globules. Sometimes it's a problem, sometimes it's not. But Dexter, fat globules are just this round thing that's fat. And it stays suspended temporarily, and then the cream will rise to the top. But the deal is Dexter's fat globules are slightly smaller than all of the breeds. Goats also have small fat globules. And so, just because of the structure of the milk itself, sometimes I can't get the Dexter milk to turn into butter if it's too hot or if it's too cold. It doesn't matter what I do, it has to pretty much hit that. Do you have that problem? Mine, if I get it straight out of the refrigerator, my butter yield isn't good.
Yeah.
If I let it sit on the counter too long, my butter yield is nil. But if it's about 55 degrees, that's when it breaks into butter the best.
That's true for other breeds too, though.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but yeah, very often. But Dexter's can be a little more fragile. But you kind of have to change the way you make dairy products with goats as opposed to cows. It's all milk. But I'm just saying, if you're jumping in there and you've never done this before and you try it and you follow the directions to the T and it didn't quite work, just chalk it up to experience and go read about goat cheese or goat whatever and see if you might tweak your processing just a little bit more towards the goat end, a tiny bit, and see if you get a better product. That's all.
It also takes a lot longer to separate.
Yes. And that's because goat milk doesn't separate. It stays basically homogenized. Those fat globules float around in the milk and don't separate into cream. And then cow milk has these big fat globules that rise to the top. Well, dextrose are in between. So really, not all of that fat is rising to the top, and it takes it longer. You're still getting, I mean, I fool myself because I'm telling myself, all the cream has risen to the top. So I'm not drinking that much fat in this dexter milk. No. There's still a good bit that's still suspended in there. And that's what it tastes so rich and so yummy, even after you let that cream rise to the top. It's a tiny difference. In the long run, it's not a major one. But since I ran into some issues here and there, I thought it was worth sharing with you. Because the fat globules are smaller. You know how people say, I can drink goat milk, but I can't drink cow milk? A lot of the reason they can do that is because the fat globules are smaller in goats. So you kind of find that happen in dexter. People that can't always drink cow milk have a nicer experience with dexter milk. And often it's because of that.
Your text up there says that implies that you need to feed a supplement to the dexter. One of the reasons I want to buy
no, well, it says can be given. Because anytime I've left that out, people have always said, well, is it okay to supplement with grain? And the answer is you can, if you want.
My question isn't about grain. It's the implication that you need to feed them a good mineral supplement.
It can be given. In other words, you won't kill your dexter cow, and you won't ruin her rumen, and you won't mess up with her milk production if you want to supplement with grain. Some people like to supplement with grain, some don't. Don't have
I'll try a third time. I'm not asking about grain. I'm asking,
or any supplement.
I'm asking, can you get decent milk production without giving them any grain or supplement, just raising them on pasture?
If your pasture is meeting their needs, yes. You have to appropriately meet your cow's nutritional needs. And if a dexter is appropriately getting her nutritional needs met, she will produce the appropriate amount of milk for you. But you can't feed them yuck, brush, with no grass. So, yes, it's good food.
I don't have as much experience as she does, but I do have a variety of dexters, and I milk almost all of them, except for some new young heifers. But I have one cow, and I think a lot of it is genetics, like you've said, stressed from the beginning. I have one cow that produces a huge amount of milk. She's got to be pushing 4 gallons a day. And she's been calving in the fall, and over winter, if I don't supplement her, she will get so skinny, she'll literally just kick her calf and me off. Like, that's it. It's survival mechanisms kick in. Her production stays the same, but her body gives it all to that calf. I have another one that, I'm not kidding, gets fat on air, but she also isn't a massive producer. So when her calf is 8 months and we wean him, or she weans him, she'll still let me milk, and I'll get at least a gallon from once a day milking out of her. But I don't have to supplement her with anything. And if I've given her extra feed, I do not see an increase in her milk production. But I will in the other cow. So if I supplement her, I have to almost give her double what I would think is necessary, just because she'll take that first ration and go, poof, let's make more milk. And then she's still getting skinny. So, I mean, I really do think it is genetics.
Yeah.
So we've switched her to a spring calving schedule, but I'm hoping to get more of those that can just eat grass. And we have quality pasture, and we do have a high protein hay. And we're going to calve in the spring, so hopefully we won't have to supplement her anymore. Because she's a great milk producer, but that's not our breeding goals. We don't want to have to supplement our dexters to get milk out of them.
Right, that's what I want.
Exactly. So you really, I think genetics really do play a large role.
The answer is you can totally hit that mark of having a dexter you have to give no supplementation to.
And this can also, you say over winter, so say, I'm in Washington, we're pretty mellow through the winter. You guys get pretty cold in the winter, don't you?
We're in Oklahoma. We can get, we certainly do get down below freezing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, this cow also, not only is she feeding the calf, she's producing milk, but she also has natural elements against her. body needs to keep herself going. and
Right.
forth.
And warm.
And
Yeah,
here's why
absolutely.
I qualify almost every statement that I make when people ask me general statements about Dexters. Because generally, the word out there is Dexters are thrifty, you don't have to supplement, you'll get great milk, and you'll get great beef. And the answer to that is yes on every account, but you can't starve them.
Right.
Or you might get a genetic line that really just isn't thrifty. I mean, there's so much possibility and variation. There's also possibility and variation in climate. There's also huge variation in pastures and in the nutritional values of pastures. So yes, you can keep in mind how you're going to hit it. And you may have some that don't thrive on your property in that manner. So then don't keep those genetics. But the genetics that thrive in Kimberly's pasture really might not thrive the same way in mine. Our climates are very different. Now, Dexters are very adaptable, for sure. But if she's getting a percentage of something in her pastures and I'm not getting that percentage of whatever it is from milk in mine, that can happen even with the same animal. So that's why I said, yeah, you can do it. You just have to get all the right stuff in line.
And I think, and I don't know if this is gospel truth, but I've experienced that how that animal is raised from the very beginning will also affect the rest of its life. So Cassandra was heavily grained before we got her, and Maggie was totally grass-fed. Maggie gets fat on air, and Cassandra gets skinny. Genetics is a large part of that, but I think because she was older, transitioning her off of grain was hard on her. So I really try, now that we're adding more to stock, I try to buy from people that I know have the same breeding goals in mind, and the same the way they raise their animals are the same. Because she does lovely. I mean, she is beautiful. I was telling Kevin, like, look at her, she's beautiful, and we're feeding her 2 quarts of grain every day because I have to, and I don't want to. But that's not fair to her to not give it to her because she needs it. So I think she might have done better had she been raised. And there's nothing wrong with feeding grain if you want to. But I wonder, because all of her calves have thrived on grass alone and are the fattest animals we've got. And they came from her, but they're not getting grain. So I wonder if she would have done better had she not
in that environment.
Been in that environment early on.
And we'll get to that if we have time. What time is it? Because that's a major point in coming up with your mission statement for your farm and deciding what kind of herds you're going to grow. You need to know who you are and how you're going to do this, or at least have a good idea about it and match that up
with your breeder,
with where you're buying from and who you're buying from and how they manage animals. A calf's metabolism is very often set by the time they're a yearling by the management that they were under, their mother's genetics, their father's genetics, but their diet. Because the rumen grows and is developed in the early years of life. So if they've developed this kind of rumen that's very much a grain-driven rumen, and now they're 18 months old and they're getting 0 grain, you're asking for a big change in that animal. So, yeah, for sure. Any more questions? I put a statement in here about Dexter oxen because Dexter in their history. Why would that be important? Why would we benefit today without ever having an ox? Because that was part of their purpose in history years ago. Because if you're going to raise an animal to be an oxen, number one, you want that animal to be long-lived. You don't want to spend 2 years, however long it takes, to train this oxen and then he dies or he's just unthrifty and you're feeding him way too much. So you want a long-lived animal, you want a thrifty animal, and you want a well-tempered animal. All of those things were set early on in the history of Dexter's when it became a breed. Those are 3 of the mainstays. They wanted their oxen to be thrifty, to be intelligent, so they can learn how to be trained, to be well-tempered, and you don't have to raise an oxen at all to benefit from those early years of breeding. But just because we don't have oxen so much today, some people do, but just because you're not raising oxen doesn't mean that those things aren't important to you. And we need to pass oxen traits down through the years. We want them to be thrifty, we want them to be smart, we want them to be docile. Of course it benefits us with our breeding animals to be that, but a lot of that is initiated because of the oxen. I think that's really cool. Any questions there? Okay. Resources. That's that little paper that I gave you. A list of things on the paper. And then a list here of things that I think it would be maybe good to just chat about real quickly. There are so many ways to get good information about Dexters. They're a rare breed for sure, but if you're ready to get out there and work and dig, you can find some major help inside the Dexter community and outside of the Dexter community on how to handle this cattle and how to raise them. You can go to Dexter shows and fairs. You don't have to show. If you do show, it's a plus, and it's great. But you don't have to show to go to seminars or to listen to the judge and to figure out why he put that animal first, or to walk down the rows and look at all the Dexters and say, I just really like this one, and I really like this one. I wish I had a whole herd of these. There's so much that you can gather just by participating, just by being around Dexter people, just by sitting down at the table and chatting and think that one question you've had forever. Just sit down beside somebody you think might have the patience to chat and you just ask them. And get their opinion. See what they have to say. Get a bunch of opinions. So I love Dexter shows and fairs for that. Well, we have to play the ADCA AGM education seminars. It's another good place. These are going to be growing. You're going to see a lot more of this happening. Let me tell you one more time. Let us know what you want to learn and the kind of seminars that will work best for you. Tell your regional director. There's my plug for our education seminars. They're going to get better every year. The regional meeting. You can get to that regional meeting. The directors that we have on the board right now are more and more are getting super focused on education and trying to figure out how to help people in their region. It benefits the regional directors. The more educated the people are in their region, then the more effective they can be when helping people in the region, because they're talking to people who know what they're talking about. So talk to your regional director and say, hey, can we have such and such seminar at our next regional meeting? Keep those channels open, because they're there to be responsive to what you need. They're waiting to see what you need. That's a good way to learn things. ADCA website, lots of information there, especially the education tab. If you want some more stuff on that education tab, send your regional director a note and say, hey, I would really love to see this in the educational tab so we can access that information easily. This one's one of my favorites. Pick a college that has an agricultural program, go to their website, find the agricultural site, and scan through it. There's tons of information. The University of Tennessee, Missouri, Ohio, Kansas, all those places that are colleges have information online about everything. You're not necessarily going to find the word Dexter, but you can take what you learn there and apply it to your Dexter. Breeder mentor programs. We have no formal breeder mentor programs, but please, if you're new, find someone you trust and ask them a million questions, and go to their farm and learn from them and let them mentor you along the path. I've found the Dexter community to be so friendly in that way. So many Dexter breeders they're ready to share. You just show up and they'll spend a day with you, walking you through things. If they can find the time, they'll do it. So and don't be afraid to be a mentor. You just have to know one thing more than the person that you're teaching. They might catch up to you and pass you up, but all the more than they can be your mentor. It doesn't matter. Mentoring isn't about this big goddess in the sky taking care of all of the other people below. It's just about, well, I know something, I'll be glad to teach you that. And by the way, I would love to know this, and I know I saw you do it. Can you teach me that? That's really what that means. Mentoring isn't from the top down. Mentoring is across the Dexter community, helping each other every way we can, whenever we can. So participate in that, wherever you can find it. Every chance you get. Right, Joel?
Right.
Okay. Joel's my amen section back there. Veterinarians are awesome. Sometimes they're puzzled by your little Dexters, and they're asking you more questions than you're even comfortable with sometimes. That's okay. Ask them stuff. You can find out a lot of stuff. Like a pregnant cow's a pregnant cow. My vet doesn't like to tell me how far along my Dexters are. That's a little, you just say you can make that guess. But he can tell me if you're pregnant or not, and he can teach me how to figure out that same thing. Vets are a great place to go for information. Social media. You can. You won't always, but you can learn things even on social media. I don't suggest that it's your first place to go or your only place to go, but there is a community of Dexter owners on social media that are willing. And sometimes it's not really the information you get there, but you connect to somebody that you could really ask questions offline. It's a good place to connect with people. Be careful about advice you get, because you don't know that person. You don't know what they're really thinking. They're just at it. It could be somebody's cat that got too smart and they're typing on. You don't know who you're talking to on social media all the time. But you can get a good start on the information there sometimes, and I think you should use that as a tool too. Any questions there? Great. Then we have my favorite subject, buying Dexters. Where to buy, how to buy, when to buy. First of all, you need this right here. Not necessarily a lot of it, but enough to these things that you can go shopping. This is probably the most puzzling and the most frightening and the most difficult thing you'll do. Because once you've spent a couple $1,000 and you have an animal on your farm, then you really know what you bought. I mean, you think you know before you bought them, but then you really know after you buy them. So it's not about the purchasing, but it's about what you do before you ever buy that Dexter that formulates your herd. So it's really important to do your before buying homework. You don't have to be all-knowing. You don't have to be a specialist. But the more you know, the better decisions you'll make. Or find a mentor that's willing to come alongside you and help you make some of those decisions. That's a really good thing too. All of those things are good things. But 3 things that I think are key, absolutely key, when you buy a Dexter. The first thing is your mission statement. The second thing is having a checklist. And the third thing is making sure you got the right paperwork that you need to meet your needs. So if you'll take the little mission statement worksheet, I did teach school, so I had to put a worksheet in there somewhere. All right? Okay, just a second. You can just, at your leisure, work your way through this. But this front page, by the time you've thought through these different options, you should be able to sit down and start to write a mission statement for yourself. The pages after this first page give you things to think about, things to check off, things to say yes or no to. Because if you're going to buy the right Dexters, then what? Define right. What's the right Dexter? If you don't have a definition of right, then you don't know when you found the right Dexter. But how are you gonna decide what right is? You got to take one more step back, and you have to say, what am I doing? I say that sometimes, often. What in the world am I doing here? But you have to ask yourself, what am I doing? Why am I raising these Dexters? Do I just want cute pets? Am I trying to be a food producer, but only for my family? Do I want to become a food producer for my community? Do I want to be self-sustaining? Do I want to live off the grid? You need to know who you are and how you want to live your life and why you have this farm and why you're going to bring Dexters and put them on it. Because once you know who you are, then you know who you're not. And when you know who you're not, you've like cut out a whole bunch of stuff that you don't even have to think about anymore. You don't have to worry about that factor. That's not even you. For me, I'm not an organic producer. So I don't have to insist that every calf I buy is from an organic farm, or has used organic practices, or has not been vaccinated, or whatever I think is my parameters for organic that I'm going to continue in my farm. So that knocks out all those worries for me. Some people just like a certain color. But if you're going to have a whole herd of dun, you're going to have a whole herd of black, you're going to have a whole herd of red, you can certainly do that, and you won't destroy the breed if you do. At all. But then, you know, don't fret over that black heifer if you're never going to bring her to your farm. Don't even ask yourself. Unless you decide that you don't want to do all red anymore. You see what I'm saying? You need to come up with some things that say who you are. And when you're sure of that, then you can really start to make some good decisions. But then you don't worry about what everybody else is buying or says that you should buy, because you're not moved by that anymore. Because you know who you are, you know why you're doing this, and that's your base. I don't worry if other people raise horn, or if they raise poll, or if they raise heterozygous polled or homozygous polled or any color. I am so okay with that. And I want you to raise exactly what you want. But it doesn't cause me any fret at all. At all. Because I know who I am. I don't mind, for us, I don't mind, we love polled animals. So I don't have to dehorn. But I can. I'm not afraid to dehorn. It's a part of my, it's a part of our routine to do that. So for me, if I find a girl that's been dehorned, and I think she's great, I'll buy her up. It doesn't insult my polled genetics at all. Because I've decided that. I've decided that's who I am. I'm going to have all kinds. I'm going to have dehorned. But if I see a girl out there with a gorgeous set of horns, and she's beautiful every other way, I'm not going to buy her. Because I've already decided in myself, I don't like dehorning older animals. I think it's very stressful on them, in my opinion. So I don't want to do that. So I'm not going to fret about that cow and worry over where I should buy her or not. I've already decided I'm not going to do that. So you can save yourself a lot of hand-wringing and, oh my gosh, should I do this or not, if you know who you are. And you need to be careful, please, when you're choosing mentors and you're working with people. Because you found someone who's teaching you so much doesn't mean you have to be like them. So I have Joel. I respect him so much, and I learn things from him. But his cows have horns, a lot of them. And so I'm not lusting over those girls with these big horns, and I'm not trying to make my farm look just like his. And he's doing the same with me. He doesn't want his farm to look just, but we learn from each other. We're mentors to each other. So mentoring doesn't mean that you're cookie cuttering somebody else's practices, somebody else's farm. So what if they do banding and you do cutting? Cutting works for us. I'm not going to tell you you have to. I'm not going to tell you banding's immoral. Don't try to tell me cutting's immoral. See what I'm saying? There are certain things that are fine and good. If you're in that fine and good category and you're not being unethical in the way you handle your animals, there are boundaries. You need to be ethical. Define yourself in that, in there, and then just be that. And then help others. Like I have this one friend who only likes horn genetics, but she wants them to be dehorned, because she doesn't want horns on her farm, but she wants horn genetics, and they need to be black. So I just pester her, and I'll send her a photo of a new calf. Because she says, I love the horned head shape, and I get that. So I'll send her a newborn red heifer and say, horned or polled. And it drives her nuts. Because she's afraid to guess. Because she told me she likes the horned head shape, which means she can discern a horned head shape from a polled head shape at birth. And she said, would you just stop doing that? I'm not trying to change her and say, and I'm not challenging her. It's friendly banter. But she knows I completely value the kind of animals that she raises. And she completely, and I can pin her. I can say, you're going to want that heifer, aren't you? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to want that heifer. Because I know who she is. And she can do this. She can walk through the barn and say, that's your favorite, isn't it? I go, yeah, it is. It's my favorite. Because she knows me and she knows who I am. That's a good thing. That means that I have to find myself and I know what I'm going to buy. I know what I'm going to like. I might change. I might learn some new things. And I might change it a little bit along the way. Who knows? Maybe what I learn is going to change my opinion. That's okay too. But knowing that will be your saving grace in ever buying any more stock. You won't go down somebody else's rabbit trail and find out that wasn't your thing. You'll find out what your thing is and just be that, and it'll be good.
And sometimes it can change and evolve over time.
Yeah, that's what I said. Well, because you're always growing and you're always learning. Now, I can always hope Jim Whale will start raising a few red in that done herd of his that he got out there. It's probably not going to happen. Probably not, yeah. He loves that. Those are all breeds. Love guns. But you can change that. I've seen people totally change their opinion of what a bull is over time. And they started watching bulls on their farm and watching bulls on other farms. And they do not buy today the same bull that they bought 2 years ago. That's good. Part of that was they realized who they wanted to be. And then they realized the bulls they had before were not who they wanted to be. They wanted to produce different kinds of calves. So yeah, we should be growing and learning all the time. All the time. Any question there? Why should you ever register your cattle in the ABCA? Surely you didn't think you would get out of this seminar without a plug for the ABCA. I'll tell you why. I love this organization. I don't love everything about everybody every day. We're just like this family. Oh my goodness, we can fight like children sometimes over the craziest stuff. But this community knows how to support each other. So if you really want to know why I like the ABCA, is I like the people in this community. I just do. I've grown so much and I've built such good friendships, and that's the real reason. Now, there's a lot of benefits to the ADCA. There's a lot of things that the ADCA offers people. They'll store your pedigrees for you. I like the integrity of the pedigrees because I like that we genotype. That means we're proving the parentage. So that gives you a safety. I like the fact that it's run by a board. There's safety in numbers, folks, and one's opinion, or just two people's opinion, isn't going to sink the ship, because the rest of the board will sink them. There's a whole board that works together, and the board is different from different regions, different opinions, different ways of looking at things, and we all work together. I like that we have paid employees, because they don't have any politics. They don't even have a vote on the board. They're just there to serve the people. That's all they want to do. They want to register for you. They want to make sure they get the minutes to you on time. They want to make sure our finances are in order. I love that. I love that there's paid employees that do their job, and they like it. Yes?
The directors, all of them are not paid.
I hear you.
Directors are not paid.
Oh, well, yeah. The directors aren't paid. The officers aren't paid. Let me tell you about the structure. We have like this community structure on the board. We have two kinds of board members, paid and unpaid. The paid board members are the registrar, treasurer, the web developer, and the secretary. They do not get a vote on the board. When the board is voting and making decisions, they're counselors. I'm not saying they're quiet, they don't say their piece. They will, but they don't get a vote. In the end, they don't get a vote. We have paid and unpaid. The rest of us are all unpaid. The only payment we get is just the joy of doing the job, and I love it. Then we also have non-voting members that are not paid. The president and vice president don't get a vote on the board. We're tasked with running the board and setting the agendas and making sure everybody follows procedures. It's an important job, but when it comes to votes, I can't even second a motion. So who makes all these decisions? Who does all the votes that finally decides what direction the board moves? It's the regional directors. And the regional directors are elected by the members. So the only people that get a vote on the board that votes on policy are the people that are elected by the members. I think that's how it should be. So that's our leadership structure, and there's no room for any despots. Nobody can be the head honcho. I mean, so what if the president or the vice president steps up to the plate and says, "This is how we have to do it"? Well, they can't even vote. Now, hopefully they're a respected leader and their counsel is valued. And if what they're saying is really true, they can sway the hearts of those who don't believe. But you can't have a president walk out of any meeting having run anything all by himself. It just doesn't happen. So I love the structure. I love how it gives division of responsibility, and it is created for accountability. And it's built so that the people with the largest voice are the people that are in the membership. If there's something going on, by the way, and you really want to talk to your regional director about it, and you say, "I would like for you to bring this to the board," they're required. Once a member says, "I need the board to hear this, would you talk to them about it?" They do it. Don't they, ladies? We have, and if the board members are not hearing from the membership, then they're feeling uncomfortable and they're starting to poll people and they're starting to send emails out and ask, because they're not sure what direction to go. They don't know how the people in the region feel. So it's important for you to give your input. We need it, we expect it, it's important. So that's kind of how the leadership goes, and that's another reason that I like the ADCA. I've seen it from the outside, and it was kind of mysterious, but I liked all my Dexter friends. And now I've seen it from the inside as a regional director and as a vice president. And it's a good system. Even leadership can go wrong, but you've got everybody else on the board that's staring you down. It's real hard to talk that many people into going some crazy direction without getting stopped. And I love that. I think it's strong. I think it's healthy. And I think that's probably one reason that the ADCA keeps standing in there and being such a strong association, is the leadership structure. Well, that plus, we just have amazing people that are willing to serve. I mean, who really wants to spend 40 hours a week helping other people for that much money? And I'm not, you can spend that long, can't you, Robin? You can spend total 40 hours a week. Just at the end of the week, you're like, "Holy smokes, that was a lot of ADCA stuff this week." It happens. Don't say a word. That's my husband sitting there. Because he's like, "Do you have to sit there at that computer?" I'm halfway through the emails, I'm still working on it. He knows it takes a lot of time and dedication, and I couldn't do it if he didn't back me. But he does. He encourages me and he backs me because he thinks it's important. You can't have a good Dexter breed if you don't have a good Dexter community. And it's really hard to have an effective well-supported Dexter community if the leadership stinks. So and you can't even say from top to bottom. Like, okay, I'm the vice president. What authority do I really have? I'm a Dexter breeder. And I help lead the other leaders, but there's nothing that I can control without the work of the whole board and the support of the whole membership. That's how it runs. I think that's really cool. I'm proud to be a part of the ADCA. And we need more workers. FYI. Now do I get on my knees and beg? We need people. If you're good at something, we need you. If you like something, we need you. If it just kind of ran across your mind 1 second worth of a thought, then please consider it again. We need more people. We need people on committees, which is another awesome thing. We have committees, and you would think a committee is kind of a fluff thing. You sit around and nothing happens on the board at all until it makes it out of committee. Committees are the workhorses. The committees hear from, what happens is the directors hear from their members, and this has happened so much this year, it's mind-boggling. They hear from the members, they go to the board, and the board says, that's a committee issue, go for it. Oh, and if we don't have a committee, we make a task force. And they gather people of like minds that care to think about it and hash through it, and that's how, when they finally have something that makes sense, they bring it to the board, and then the whole board starts all over hashing it out. So it's an awesome system, and the more voices, the better. So I hear some people say, no, I don't feel like I have a voice. And then my statement is then, open your mouth. You can have a voice, but you just got to speak it. You got to talk to your regional director, stand up, raise your hand. I'll be on that committee. I would love to. And I severely doubt you'll be denied that position on the committee because we need more helpers. I mean, guess how the Jepsons got to record the educational session? They're like, oh, we could probably do that, and bam, you're doing it. Probably becomes will instantly because we didn't have, it was a hole, we had a need, and they were willing to do it, and we said absolutely, and we'll help you any way that we can, but please do it. So that's my spiel for the ADCA. I love the organization, and I love the support that they give to their members. And it's not perfect because people aren't perfect, but I think it's a good system. And I think it's working well. Any questions? Anything we need to go back over and hash? There's so much that didn't get said. But what I'm hoping today, okay, if you're going to walk out of this room, what I want you to walk out of this room is with this. A sense that you're important when you raise Dexters. You're doing something that I believe is important for our economy, important for our society, and important in this time. I want you to feel that and know that's true. And I also want you to feel and know that what you know needs to grow. You need to keep learning. But we all need to keep learning. Tell the ADCA how we can help you and how we can empower you. And please take the resources that you just got today. See how much further you can take them. Anything I left out here? What time is it? And did I do? Did I do okay?
I kept it right, yeah.
Right.
Hey.